Hello and welcome to The Insider. I'm Lisa Adams. Welcome to our viewers and to our listeners on the radio as well. Today, we've been planning to talk about recruiting new police officers for the Erie Police Department and working to diversify the force. But now this conversation comes against the backdrop of this week's guilty verdict for former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin in the death of George Floyd. So much to talk about today. My guests to begin are Erie Police Chief Dan Spizzarni and Sergeant Tom Lennox, who is the Police Athletic League and Recruiting Coordinator. Welcome to you guys. So there has been a national conversation about race, justice, and policing since the death of George Floyd, even certainly before that. So let's start off with this. How do you react, Chief, to the verdict? Guilty on all counts. Do you think it will start a healing process in this nation?
Well, we hope so. The criminal justice system is what we have and we rely on. And the jury had the chance to listen to all the facts from both sides. We live with that verdict and we move on.
And so how about you, Sergeant Lennox? I mean, so many people felt that it was so hard to watch that video for the jurors who went through the trial. They had to watch it over and over and over again. Your thoughts on that verdict?
Echoing what Chief Spizzarni said, we just hope that, regardless of what that verdict was, we just hope and we pray that, that this country and our community can move forward together. That's basically it. It's time to move on and move forward and push together.
So, we heard a lot from our local African American community when the verdict came down. We're hearing relief and at the same time caution, because right away there was an officer involved shooting of a woman in Columbus, so we can show some body cam video of that, as well as the recent shootings of Dante Wright in Brooklyn Center, Adam Toledo, 13, shot by an officer in Chicago. So how do you point up the positive policing here in Erie and convince young people, especially, that this work is important and something that they might be called to do? Let's start with you, Chief. Against this backdrop, and against these other challenges that still go on, other incidents that have happened recently, how do you go about trying to attract people to the department?
Well, you have to understand that every day is a challenge for the position of a police officer. And I think that's something you have to realize before you get on the job, and you have to be prepared that every day is a challenge. And what we did when I started 31 years ago, compared to how we do things now. Things change. We adapt, we adjust, we learn, and we do better as time goes on. And just because a mistake was made, that doesn't define all police or all policing. So, and I think departments across the country are reflecting on, what they saw, and they're making changes to adapt. It's a growing process. It never stops.
Yeah, in Columbus, interestingly, they were very quick to release this body camera video. We can show you a little clip of that. But Sergeant Lennox, talk about adding body cams into the Erie Police Department. How's that been going for the officers on the force? And do you think it's something that gives a little bit more trust to the community?
The first thing I'd like to say is, part of being a good police officer when you are out there recruiting and you're looking for the right individual, the right candidate, it's very important that, we stress that part of being a good officer is also having the ability to look at, the facts, the circumstances around every situation that happens across cities across the country. So with that being said, I did not have an opportunity to see the Columbus incident, but again, we got to caution ourselves before community and law enforcement decide to make their decision. We have to be patient as a society to let the process play itself out and have faith that the right decision is going to be made in that circumstance. But going back to the body cams in our backyard, yes, I do believe that, body cameras are an extra tool to not only help the community with regards to the transparency, but it also helps the officers who are put in these situations and responding to calls on an hourly basis to essentially tell the full story on all the circumstances that our officers are responding to. So yes, I think it's a win-win for both the officer and the community.
So I don't want to spend too much time looking backward, but I have to point out that Erie wasn't immune from the anger over George Floyd's death, with a destructive riot happening here. We have a little bit of video of that night. So surprising to many of us. We've talked about this before. So how do the dangers of policing, the injuries to some of your own officers, Chief, that night challenge you when it comes to recruiting people to do police work, and, as Sergeant Lennox said, finding the right people for the job, because it is a dangerous job.
It is, and it takes a special person to have that desire and to get on the department. When those things happen, that's not something that we're used to seeing here in Erie. You know, that was very unusual. It was, you know, a mob mentality that really drove the narrative that night, and that's why we put our trust in the system. We have to have faith that things will turn out right. It may not happen immediately, but there are multiple levels of review, and those take time. And people, you know, it's patience, and it's faith.
So does this cultural moment make your efforts here in Erie to recruit more minorities to the force even more important? How is progress going there? You provided me with some statistics. I can show our viewers at home those statistics right now. 173 people on the force, total officers, but we can see the breakdown of diversity there. Chief, are you encouraged by this, or does much more need to be done?
Well, that's where we're at. And, you know, the mayor and members of the community have expressed a desire that they want to see those numbers higher. They want to see more diversity. And we're working towards that. Obviously not something that can be accomplished overnight, in a week, in a month, in a year. It'll take time. It's taken time to get our numbers to this level. I don't see there's any negative by doing it, but we also have to have a realistic expectation. Is what are we going to, where will we achieve when we've reached those numbers? If we don't have the training and the proper procedures, it won't make a difference. So we have to have a realistic expectation of what will happen there.
That's right. Officers have to be good officers, no matter their background. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about the specific strategies Erie Police are employing right now to recruit, how many openings there may be in the future, and about some important dates for those who are interested. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Insider. I'm Lisa Adams. We're talking about police recruiting in the City of Erie Police Department. My guests again, Erie Police Chief Dan Spizzarni and Sergeant Tom Lennox, who is the Police Athletic League and Recruiting Coordinator. Erie's Community Liaison, Michael Outlaw, will be joining us in our next segments as well. So we've talked about the challenges at this moment in time, nationally and locally. So what are the strategies that you're using to reach out and try to recruit people to become candidates for the Erie Police Force? Chief, let's start with you.
Well, the first thing that the department did was that we designated a individual to be that coordinator of recruitment, and Sergeant Tom Lennox is the lead on that. We have a point person. He's not alone in the position. There's many officers in the department that are assisting him, but he's kind of spearheading the procedures.
So talk about the procedures, Sergeant Lennox. You've been at this for a little while now. Do you think it's making a difference in how to have somebody dedicated to that and how it was going before this point? And tell us a little bit about who you're looking for and how you're trying to find them.
Well, you know, I mean, I would say that the first major difference in change in the recruiting process through the years is, you know, the mayor's office and our current police administration realized that, recruiting isn't something that comes along every cycle. I mean, it's something that is a sustaining process that has to happen year round. So, at the end of the last recruiting cycle in 2020, our department immediately got out ahead of things by, assessing the last cycle, coming up with some strategies in ways to how to better get that information out to the public. As far as, what we're doing now, I can tell you that I've already been to the Marine Base Reserve Center in Pittsburgh. I've already started the recruitment seminars inside of our college universities, Gannon, Edinburgh, and Mercyhurst. I got 3 other military bases that I plan to go to in May, which is groundbreaking for our department because we've never done it. In addition to that, this year's challenge is to bring more of our community leaders on board to this discussion. Because at the end of the day, we talk and have talked for years about making the police department more reflective of the community, but we need the help of our leaders. We sent out letters to all the churches throughout the city of Erie. We've already had a meeting just last week with a lot of our clergy to basically tap into their knowledge and to tap into their help to get that information and that word out to the community. So when I say that we are ahead of the ball game going into 2021, we are.
So we know that you have to take a physical test and then a written test if you're interested as part of the application process. So let's show people the important dates that they need to know because they're coming up here, especially to apply. So June 30th is the deadline to get an application in. That's right. And then the test coming up on August 7th.
Correct.
Yes.
Chief. So do you have a lot of applications already? Because the window is open now, right?
Yes. Traditionally what we see every year, and I'm just comparing it to last year's cycle, I spoke with an official out at Mercyhurst Police Academy, and he's advised me that the application numbers have gone up, being that the applications opened on April 5th. Being that, we are out there, boots on the ground, so to speak. We have a lot of returning applicants that did not get on the job last year that are repeating the cycle again this year. But it's very important that if, the candidates or the applicants did go online and apply, I would recommend that, that they start preparing and studying not only for the written component of it, but for the physical component of it as well, for the test in August.
Got to be working out because you have to pass that physical part of the test before you can go on and do the written test. So
Correct.
You talked about recruiting colleges, military. So are most hires now coming with a college degree in law enforcement? And I know credit has been given in the past for military service, but there's been some criticism across the nation, like should somebody have a military background? Is that bringing a little bit of baggage into policing? So your thoughts on approaching college educated and military background potential candidates?
Yeah, just to respond to that, as far as considering military recruits baggage, our department has proven that, almost 50% of our hires or our officers within our department do have a military background. Although having a military background and a college degree is extremely beneficial, which I think helps in your professional development as a police officer, it is not a requirement to come and work for the City of Erie Police Department.
Chief, you may want to quickly weigh in on that too, the college education, the military background, and also, diversity training to work with Erie's ethnic population. Is that something that would come after someone is hired, or if somebody has a college degree, have they already been exposed to that?
Well, I got lost there.
Yeah, that's a lot of questions. All right, so first of all, the college degree background and the military background, do you think those are pluses as well?
College and military both have benefits to them. And our department does have a diverse group that are college grads, that are military grads, and are both. But we also have some tremendous officers that have neither of those, college or military. Again, it comes down to the heart of wanting to do the right thing and serve the citizens of your community. I think that's it's something that you can't predict as a single background. It's a diverse group.
Well, when we come back, we know there has been a multi-year effort underway to strengthen police and community partnerships, and we will be joined by Community Liaison Michael Outlaw to talk about that. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Insider. We're talking about recruiting police for the City of Erie Police Department, and joining the conversation now is Michael Outlaw, who for the City of Erie is the community liaison. So, Michael, you have been committed to strengthening police and community partnerships. Do you feel like you've succeeded, and how does that help with the police recruiting process?
Well, do we feel as though we've succeeded? I think we've made great strides, in improving police and community relations. We understand, we have a long way to go, but nonetheless, we've definitely made some strides. I think people feel as though the bridge is being repaired. I honestly believe that people are more comfortable with engaging officers, on the beat and within community centers, and when they see us outside, within their communities. And so, yes, I think we've made strides in that area. And also believe that the SPCP Council is like the balance, because you can't have one without the other. It's important that the community leaders, like Sergeant Lennox alluded to earlier, it's very important for the community leaders to support the efforts to improve these police and community relations. There has to be accountability and transparency on both sides of the aisles. And so, again, with that in mind, we are still working towards those efforts.
So when you see what happened with the Derek Chauvin verdict, and you see some of these other crimes happening, or these police-involved shootings and criminal situations across the country, do you feel like Erie is ahead of the game because of these conversations you've been having, that these relationships are getting stronger between the minority community and the police department here in Erie?
Yes, without a doubt, and that's attributed to Mayor Schimber's leadership. In 2018, when he first came into office, the Department of Justice chose Erie as a pilot city to run the program. And because of the mayor's foresight and insight, and understood the importance of police and community relations, we've tackled the issue head on, and we believe that we made some great strides again, but we'll continue to do the work that's necessary to move the needle for a more police-oriented community.
What are your priorities in the coming year? I'll ask you, Michael, and then Chief, I just would like you to weigh in too on whether you, on the force, feel the difference in the effort that's been made here.
Well, our top priority is to continue to have these honest, transparent conversations and identify ways to improve upon the efforts that we've been doing over the past 4 or so years. And so, again, our priority is to improve these relationships between the police and community, as well as focus on the community supporting us with recruiting minorities or persons of color, to answer the call to become a police officer.
Chief, do you feel the difference? Because it's not just the African-American community that you need to build bridges with, but really this growing minority community in Erie of new Americans too. It's complicated.
Well, the SPCP luckily encompasses all these different groups. When we started it back in 2018, and it gives everybody a chance to talk in a rational, personal level. We don't want people just outside screaming and complaining about things. We want people to be able to sit down and say, okay, how do you see it on your side? This is how we see it. And we come to a common understanding. We don't always agree, but at least we understand where each other are coming from. But from some of those conversations, we make changes. We do more outreach now than we've ever done. Even in spite of our calls for service and the actual police work we have to do, we realize that part of actual police work is interacting with the community.
Has that outreach been complicated a little bit by a year of COVID-19? Did that tamp down any of the good work that you were trying to do, or were you able to work around that somehow? I know you had a number of officers that got COVID.
Well, COVID has definitely been a challenge for us, as it has been for everybody. Some of the great things that we'd like to do and get out and be involved in. We just haven't been able to. But there have been steps that SBCP Council's taken. We have done some outreach. We've taken out, Bonnell's has been great with their ice cream truck. We've been going out and passing out masks last year. We went into the neighborhoods where the most calls are coming from. And we've tried to engage with members of the public. So we're doing what we can under the medical conditions we have right now. But we're looking forward to the next year of getting past COVID and continuing.
All right, well, when we come back, the Police Athletic League is another piece of all of this. We're going to talk about how it proceeded during COVID-19 and how it could be a tool that recruits young police officers in the future. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Insider. It's all about police recruiting today. So the last segment here, we're going to talk about PAL, the Police Athletic League. Sergeant Lennox, how's that work during COVID-19? And is this a recruiting tool to get kids to trust police and maybe consider law enforcement as a career?
The answer to your question, yes. But, the first thing I want to address is, the Police Athletic League originally was revived back in 2015 with the sole purpose and the sole goal was to try to improve relationships between our officers and the youth in our community, and give both kids and officers an opportunity to basically see each other as human beings and to educate each other along this process. Within the last 5 years. But with regards to COVID-19, it did have its challenges last year when the school year abruptly ended. City of Erie School District was so kind to let us officers join their after-school program throughout the year, virtually, in a virtual setting, to where we had an opportunity to keep in touch with our kids 4 out of the 5 days of the week during the school year.
Chief, do you think this will bear fruit in the long run? I mean, we've reported on, sometimes people in neighborhoods don't want to say what's going on, don't want to get involved. Do you think if you're building trust with the very youngest citizens of Erie that will bear fruit for your relationships long term?
I believe so. I've been to some of the events and I see the kids. And it's not just the kids. The important part of this program too is that there's almost 60 officers now that are involved in PAL. And they have that experience. Well, we have young officers that come on the job that don't have kids, but they're going and doing these PAL events, and they're understanding and talking to the children who sometimes tell them what's going on in their family as to the problems. So it benefits both sides, the children and the officers.
Well, I think this could have been an hour-long program, but we want to remind you again of those important dates, June 30th to apply if you're interested in being in the police force. And again, you have to pass the physical test August 7th at Northeast High School to go on to that written test to get on the list for possible openings. So just real fast, Tom, 1 or 2 word answer, how many openings might there be?
I can't tell you how many openings. It depends on how many people that we have retire within the next year.
Well, thank you so much, all of you, for a great conversation, and thank you for joining us. Join us again next time for The Insider.